Hey everyone, welcome to the workshop. We're about to start. We're going to wait just a bit longer. There's more people signing up. It's really exciting. We have people from all over the world joining in, and it's awesome. It's awesome. So we're just going to wait a few more minutes, and then we're good to go. There's a chat on the right of my screen, so I can see what's happening. It's really cool. Yeah, people are signing up. Okay, are we good to go?
Yeah.
All right. So, welcome to my workshop. Today I want to talk to you in detail about something that really makes a big difference in my farming, which is crop planning. And we are going to go in details about not exactly what to do, because each is own, especially in different contexts with growers from all over the world, but some key principles that if you follow them and if you go through with it, they really help you strategize better and get a good framework for how to manage the complexity of dealing with growing 40 different crops on small acreage all at once. So that's the intention for today. It's going to be a full-on hour workshop, more or less. So I don't think we'll have time for questions, but there's going to be room for you to leave comments or questions about the specific of this workshop on your right there with the chat. Okay? So first of all, a bit of who I am, because I think most of you guys might be familiar with my work, but perhaps for me to just re-emphasize the reason why I do what I do. I started farming 15 years ago. I was in my early 20s, and I was looking for an alternative lifestyle. And that's what we found with growing on few acres. My wife and I have been really fortunate to raise our kids in the countryside, to farm with the season and be involved in our community. And it's just been an awesome time. And the reason why I wrote a book called The Market Gardener was I felt that we were living the good life and we wanted to pass down some of it to others so that they could also achieve this. And that's still why today I'm teaching and helping growers, is for them to get just better at doing what they have to do in order to get a life, which is really what we're about. I think farming is awesome, growing vegetables is important, but you want to make sure that you have enough room in your life to be with your family, with your friends, to do other stuff in life. And so part of the crop planning is a big part of that too. Like I said, I've been farming for a long time, so this is my 15th growing season. My wife and I have been growing on under 2 acres for all of these years, and 4 years ago I started another project, which is an experimental farm here in Quebec. All the information that I have about my first farm is written in The Market Gardener. It's now translated in 8 languages. Sold 150,000 copies worldwide. It's just awesome. Just can't believe how much response there is to this book. It's really cool. And I've been giving workshops now for 6-7 years all over the world. And the goal is always the same, to give, inspiration for people to start farming as a lifestyle and a career, but most importantly, to give them a methodology and a framework for them to be successful at it, which is really what we're about today. So, crop planning. Why is it important? Crop planning is fundamental when you're wanting to have successful farming, because it is what allows you to manage all the complexity that is involved with growing 40 different crops at the same time on a small piece of land, and with all of the different needs and requirements that all of these crops have. And it allows you to maximize your space and your time. And we'll get to that as we go along here. So it's a big part, I think, of our success on the farm is directly linked to the fact that we've perfected crop planning methodologies. We've been crop planning from the start. One of my good friends is Dan Brisebois and Fred Thériault. They wrote the original crop planning handbook. And so we've been thinking about how to crop planning for the better for a long time. And a big part also is that it takes the heat that's in the summer when we're really busy, there's so many variables, there's so many moving parts, and then we do all the planning in the winter months when, you know, it's a lot more tranquil and we have time to think and rest and just put time into the crop planning. So we do this. We take all of the heat of the summer and we bring it into the wintertime with a well thought out plan that we execute in the summer. And that is the lifesaver. That allows us to have a life, and that allows us to be really well organized. So that's why you want a crop plan. And again, I think a big part of my farming success, especially on this new farm project where, you know, we're farming 5 acres really intensively. We're doing huge volumes of produce. We're dealing with a lot of crops, a lot of people, a lot of stuff. A big part of my work the last few years has been to refine how we approach crop planning, making sure that when the season starts, we're really on the dime moving forward. So the 5 steps that I'm going to talk to you about today in order are a sequence that you follow. And again, I'm not going to give you all the specific details of how to operate, run, or make your own calendars. It's up to you. But if you follow these steps, you will be successful in crop planning. And that's going to impact your farming season really beneficially. So that's the goal for today. So the 5 steps are set your yearly objectives and financial goals. So always start your crop planning session with these 2. Financial goals and your yearly objectives. Number 2, you want to establish your game plan. Okay, the game plan is what you're going to grow, in what quantity, and where you're going to set that out. Number 3 is set up operating calendars. So your calendars will help you navigate through hard times and to the complexity of the season. Essentially, those calendars will tell you what to plant, where, when to start your seedlings, and where to direct seed everything at what time. So you're just following calendars that tell you what to do when. So it really helps a lot. Number 4 is you're going to map out your season. For all the seedlings that you're going to start in the season, you'll have a pretty good idea of where they're going and by what this crop is going to be succeeded next. And then tied that to your calendar, then the crop that is preceding the other one is started in the calendar, so you're all following through with a continuous line. So we'll look at that in detail. And then the last step, step number 5, is to order all of your seeds, all the equipment, all the material that you need for your growing seasons. You want to take care of that in the winter months when you're not farming full-time. Okay, so these are the 5 steps. We'll go through each of them in detail. But again, the goal for today is just to explain to you that there's a methodology, there's an approach to how to go about crop planning. And if you follow those 5 steps, I'm 100% confident that you'll see big improvements on your farm. Okay, so step number 1, set your yearly objectives and financial goals. Basically, what this is that you want to start with the end in mind. The reason why we farm, yes, is because we love it. Yes, it's because we're living an alternative lifestyle, but it's also a business, and you want to make sure that your financials will be, in line with where your goals are, or at least that you're aware of where you're going with regards to your financials. And also, the other thing is that, farming is awesome, but there's more to it than just farming. And so either you're improving on your farm or your farming skills or your farming community, or you want to add different stuff in your farming life which are more personal. So these need to be set out ahead of the season so that you're making sure that you're committing to them. And this starts with a mission statement. You should have a mission statement for your farm, the reason why you farm, and what your goals and objectives, and just state it out, why you're farming. So we'll look at that. And then from there, my advice to you, and I've seen this make a big impact on a lot of farms that I've worked with in the past, is you should find and have 5 goals for your upcoming season. Okay, we'll look at that. And once this is all pretty laid out, you need to have a specific sales target. And from that sales target, the whole production plan starts with that. Okay? So, mission statement. Okay? If you don't know about mission statement, you can look them up. The reasons why we do them in business, it's really because it just clarifies our intention. And so I'll give you an example. Our mission statement at the farm was written many, many years ago, and every year we either reaffirm it or change it. But it's been pretty much in the likes of, by farming, we wish to create a healthy, productive, and meaningful lifestyle for our family. That was the reason why we started the farm in the first place. We are aiming to be active community members by being healthy food providers and a hub for alternatives. We want to homestead with our kids, raise them in the countryside, and be as close to nature as possible. We also want to be successful entrepreneurs, well on our way to becoming very good growers in order to teach others how to do this. Above all, and that's the end statement, and I'm encouraging you to always end your end statement with something that is really large in scale and scope, in abundance. We want abundance, happiness, and creativity in our daily lives. The farm works for us and not the other way around. So that's the mission statement of our farm. And I encourage you to write one down for your farm and to make sure before you start another season that you're happy and in line with your mission statement. Then the 5 goals. The 5 goals are personal to you and each his own, but they should answer these 4 questions, and you'll need to write those down. If you want it to be effective, you need to take the time to write this up. So, why is that goal important? How will you get there? What specific strategy are you putting in place to get there? And when? By when will these strategies be implemented so that you reach your goal? So you have the 4 questions that you need to answer for each of these goals. Why, how, what, and when. So an example of this is that this year our goal might be to raise our yearly income because I don't want to be working in the winter months on the farm, outside of the farm. Okay? So that's my goal. And then I'm going to answer the 4 questions, which is why? Why is this my goal? Okay, so my goal is because I wish to spend my whole farming and also take a break in the winter. I want to farm full on, and in the winters I want to rest. So I want to make enough money in the summer months so that I don't need to work in the winter. How will I get there? I need to raise my sales to 100 Gs this year. So that's my goal. And what? And, what's the strategy there? So one of my key thing here is I want to up my sales at farmers market. And I'm targeting that if I sell 60 customer cards where people prepay, I'll get to my objective. So that's my new goal now. I need to sell these 60 customer cards. And I want to get that done by June 10th. Okay? So it's simple, but it's laid out and it's out there. And that's the best way to get that done. Another goal might be more personal. And, for many years, me and my wife were working full-time on the farm. And then we realized that, one of the reasons why we wanted the farm was to provide a healthy environment for our kids. But then we were working all the time. And I remember when I was young, I would take camping trips with my parents, and I wanted to do the same. So this year, the goal, one year, the goal was to take a week vacation with the kids to go camping. Okay, so why? I need to answer it. I got to go camping when I was young with my parents, and I want to do the same for my kids. A break midsummer would also allow me to recharge my battery. How? I'm going to book a week off to do this and prepare for replacement on the farm. And the what is really the strategy here is that I'll find volunteers or friends to come down on the farm to help during those weeks. and I will make sure that I will invest time and tasks and lists so that all that needs to be done happens during that week of absence, so that people that take up my spot, they know exactly what to do. So I'll be prepared for this to happen. And when? Well, I'm booking the campsite right now. So it's done, it's in the books, I'm going. So I just need to prepare. So these are 2 examples, and you need to come up with your goals and try to make those goals, goals that really make a big difference for you. It might be that you want to play music more, or it might be that you want to make a lot more money, or it might be that you want to just have more young people come to your farm, whatever. But make sure that you state it out and that you get 5 of these objectives for their season. It might be that you want to improve your farming and that you taking a master class with JM will help you get there. Okay, so that would be one example, and I'm sure that would help. All right, once that is done, and those things are really important. That's why I started with this. We're always excited to go in figures and numbers and calendars, but don't forget your objectives, because in the end, if you want to get anywhere, you need to have clear goals. That's the bottom line. Okay? Once that's done, you really need to start your season with a pretty clear picture of how much cash you want to generate with the sales of your vegetable. Is it 60 G's? Is it 100 G's? Is it 150? Is it 300? Is it 500? Is it 700? It doesn't matter. But you want to have a target, okay? And those sales will be determined by your total growing area, your number of employees, the number of weeks at market. That really determines your production plan and your experience as a grower. So you need to figure out by yourself what good sales objectives are, and then from there you stick with that. And also the margins. The margins are so important because that's the bottom line. That's the amount of money that you'll be making in your pocket at the end of the year. So good margins on a market garden that is well run with good methodology and good sales outlet should be around 40 to 50. It could be a bit less if you're less experienced, and it could be more if you're really good at what you're doing. But from 40 to 50 is a good rough estimate. And mind you, I don't think this is for year number 1 exactly. Year number 1, if you're really starting out and you're buying all the infrastructure and everything needs to be, organized for the first year, your margins definitely are going to be smaller. But quickly enough, you'll find yourself in that sweet spot. And that's a good way to go about it. Okay? So an example of this is that we're doing a 2-acre market garden, and we have 180 permabeds. Okay? They're all 100 foot long. We have 3,000 square foot of greenhouse and cold houses, 1 seasoned grower with 3 full-time employees working 50 hours a week, in production 9 months with 30 weeks at market, and those markets are good. So there's a strong demand for local organics. And you're selling everything directly. Okay, so most of what I teach and my experience with market gardening is that you can outcompete bigger mechanized growers, but not if you're doing wholesale. Wholesale accounts work with volumes, so you need to produce a lot with short margins to get a lot of cash. When we're doing market gardening, it's the reverse economics. We're doing not a lot of volumes, we're doing a lot of diversity, and we have fewer customers, but we're selling everything directly. And we're in direct relationship with these customers. We're their family farmers. And so there's something that, big business cannot compete with, which is this relationship. Okay, so I'm not going to go into that, but that's part of the explanation here. And so an example would be, and this is pretty much based on what we've been doing for the last 10 years at La Grelinette, is we'll be doing 150,000. That's our sales target for a given year. And our margins are from 40 to 50. Let's say we're at 40. And so we pretty much start the year thinking that we'll make 60 G's in our pocket. And then once you're there, you need to ask yourself, okay, is that enough? Can I pay the mortgage? Does it pay the bill? Does it pay for me to go surfing in Mexico for 3 months? Whatever your goals are, you need to make sure that you're aware that this is what you're targeting and projecting, and you need to make sure that you're in line. It's also a great time to ask yourself, if I have all these customers, in this example, we have pretty much around 200 families that we're selling, plus minus $25 of weekly veggies over 30 weeks. Can I add another revenue stream? What if I sold eggs to them? What if I did, pestos, whatever? Instead of looking for more customers, how about I try to sell more to the customers that I already have? So these questions, you ask themselves these questions at that time, okay? And then you need to just push on it just a bit through to make sure that this works out and then your targets are on board. And one key thing that I'm mentioning here is making sure that, if you're doing averages, weekly averages of sales, and 150 divided by 30 weeks in our example gives us an average of $5,000 of vegetables per week. Well, that means that you're probably going to be doubling that at a given point in time in the season because it's going to be your peak production. And you have all your tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, and the markets are going to be crowded with people. And then you need to see, can your truck handle that load? Are your markets good for that? Is it imaginable to see that you're selling that much cash? So all these questions, these are examples of what you need to ask yourself, but in the end, what you want is a clear objective of how much money you want to be generating in sales for that year. And piece of advice from many, many years of doing this successfully is that your sales target should not be over optimistic nor pessimistic. They should be as close to the target as possible because all of your production calendar are based on those targets. Okay, so try to be realistic and try to be as clear as possible, even if it's hard. I know it is. It's not obvious to know exactly what you're going to be doing, but at least if you're aiming for something, you might not be totally off targets. Okay? So that was step number 1. We start with that. So you have your objectives, you have your mission statement, and you have your sales objective. And from there, you're going to write your game plan. And your game plan is definitely where all of this becomes very, not personal, but it depends on where you are, how hot your market is, if there's saturation for CSA, if there's a lot of chefs that are into it. Whatever the circumstances, that's going to pretty much define your game plan. So you need to determine your sales outlet. Are you selling your veggies through CSA, farmers market, chefs, all of them, whatever? You need to know that before you start your season. And then you need to ask yourself, which veggies am I growing? Am I growing, 70 different vegetables with, 4 cultivars per vegetables? Or am I doing 12 vegetables and really streamlining my operation? You need to think about all this, and you need to understand also ahead of time whom you're going to be selling those vegetables to. From there, and we'll revisit those steps again, you ask the 2 fundamental questions which make up your game plan, which is for all of your sales outlet, determining what you're going to grow, how much you need to grow to fill your orders weekly, and by when do all of these crops need to be in the field or in the nursery to make sure that you have everything as according to plan. So these are the big questions, okay? So, circling back, sales outlet. Okay, we said that you need to determine your sales outlet. An example would be we're aiming to have a 75-member CSA on Wednesday. The pickup is from 4:30 to 7, and the harvest is on Tuesday. Okay, so that's one of my sales outlets, 75-member CSA on Wednesday. And then I also want to have 5 restaurants in town, which I deal with, and I'm delivering to them from 1 to 4 on Wednesday. Okay, and the harvest for that is on Tuesday. So Wednesday I have delivery from 1 to 4, and then I have a CSA, and I'm leaving with the truck filled with veggies, and the harvest for that is all done on Tuesday. So boom, that's what I want to do. And then Saturday is my third outlet, and which is I'm doing farmers market Saturday morning. And that's a big market. It's a big part of our sales, 50%. And the harvest is on Friday for that market, okay? But it could be anything. So this is one example, but it could be anything. What I would encourage you guys to do, however, is to have 2 harvest days in your week. A lot of crops like summer squash, bell peppers, tomatoes, you're going to be cucumbers, you'll be harvesting every other day, some of them even every day. And so to have 2 big harvest days means that you'll have always continuous supply of fresh stuff. The little turnips that you're harvesting on Friday, and then you're picking some of the bigger ones, then the other ones will grow bigger, and then they'll be ready next Tuesday. So you should aim to have 2 harvest days. Tuesday and Friday for me are the most logical of these days, and then you circle your markets around that, okay? So then again, we were talking about asking yourself, what crops are you growing? Are you growing everything? Like, really? Do you have the experience? Do you have the capacity? Do you have the room at your farmer's market table to have 50 different vegetables with all the cultivars and is that realistic? Are you a young grower starting out? Perhaps 12 to 15 is better, under 20? Or is your market exactly that you have a lot of diversity? Well, you need to ask yourself that question. And one thing, if you're doing the market gardening scheme, you should definitely focus on the high value crops that per square foot in space, in time, will generate more revenue. Okay, so a bed of leek that will be in the ground for 90 days that generates $400 is definitely not as worth as let's say Hakurei turnips that are generating $300 per bed, but on 30 days. You'll have the chance to do 3 times the Hakurei turnip in the same amount of time that you're doing 1 time the leeks. And so all of these math, we have graphs, I'll show you here. We've mapped out all of these crops, the revenues in space and in time, and there's definitely some that if you have the option, you're better to focus on. And the other example is, if you're competing with mechanized growers, and these guys do storage crops, let's say potatoes, and you're growing potatoes on your farm, and you're planting them by hand, you're using a pitchfork to take them out of the soil, you're brushing them, you're bringing your potatoes at market, and then your neighbor is mechanized, he has a potato planter, he has a potato digger, a potato brusher, it's all fully mechanized, and then he's like 100 times more productive than you are, but you cannot get a better price than him at market for your potatoes because they're both storage crops. Potato's a potato. Yours is not fresher than his. If you're bringing salads, mesclins, or if you're bringing carrots that have their tops on, then you might have an advantage over the more mechanized grower. Okay, so you need to ask yourself these questions and then choose which crops you're going to grow and which sales outlets all of these veggies are going to go to. So in my example, some of the crops that I want to do for the restaurants are crops that are easily available, rapid turnover. I can grow them pretty much not year round, but almost. So chefs like consistency and reliability, so I focus on that. And then our CSA is so we want to have more diversity, but we want to have just a little bit of all of this diversity. So these are examples. Okay, so you're determining which crop you're going to grow for which of your sales outlet. And again, these are all specific to your liking, to your customers, where you are. If I try to sell okra here in Quebec, it's not going to work. But if I'm in Memphis, it might be my number 1 crop. So this is all site specific, and you need to come up with your own answers. Now, the big thing is once you've decided which crops you're going to grow and to whom you're going to sell them, you need to figure out ahead of time how much you need of each. And that's really important, okay? So you need to create programs where you're thinking, okay, I think for my chefs, I'll be selling pretty much more or less, 200 bunches of carrots per week to them. And market is going to be another 100, and my CSA is going to be 75. So then you say, okay, I want to have carrots every other week in my CSA, so you count that. I want to have fresh carrots every week for market, and then for my chefs, I want to have them every week. So for all of your crops, you kind of need to figure out how much you need of each, and you'll be calculating your yields in terms of beds. And that's really cool. And that's one of the main reasons why in our farm designs, all of our beds are standardized, so that the beds, they can be 50 feet, 80, or 100. It doesn't really matter, but the fact that they're all the same size, you can easily calculate your production in terms of beds. And that simplifies a lot of the calendars and a lot of the mapping out of the season also. So the bed becomes a unit of measure, okay? And then, again, all of this needs to answer a lot of questions. And that's why the game plan, I could give you my exact game plan here for the farm, but you in your context, you might have a really different reality. Some of the consistent things is that if you're dealing with chefs, they like reliability and consistency. So they want to have produce that are really, really perfect, and they want to have them every week if possible because they're putting them on the menu. So it's a really bad strategy to have bumper crops for them because what they want is just a little bit of the same every week. If you're doing farmers market, the best advice I can give you is pile high and watch it fly. So you want to have piles as high as possible. But also you want to be the first at market with your produce. I've always thought, and I've seen this so many times, the first one at market with the veggie is king. First carrots, first beets, first lettuces, first tomatoes. So you want to be as early as possible for your market. And if you're doing CSA, to talk about that, well, you need to have a little bit of everything so that your share are balanced. And so you'll have from 8 to different crops. You'll have roots, and you'll have salads, and you'll have fruits, and you'll have herbs. And you want to make sure that it's balanced and diverse as possible with an exchange box at the end so that people can choose what they want to not have in their basket this week and choose something else. So I could go on with examples, but today I'm sticking with the methodology for crop planning. And perhaps another time I could talk for hours about strategies to get a good game plan, but now we're focusing on crop planning. Okay? So once you have that, for all of your crops, carrots, all the crops, you need to have somewhat of a program. Okay? So carrots, for example, we want to have an estimated 300 bunches per week of carrots that we're selling in all of our outlets. And so you need to figure out how many beds you're going to plant, and when do you need to plant each of the beds to make sure that you have consistent supply. And then you need to tackle the question of early plantings and late plantings because, as temperatures drop or rise and as the light period changes through the season, your growth period is not the same. So you have your main season program, and then usually you have your early season and late fall program that are kind of different. In our climate, what we usually do is that our last seeding date, outside seeding date, is usually doubled, tripled, or quadrupled because the crops are going to take less time to grow, but they'll just kind of hang out in the garden, and then we're going to pick them over many more weeks. Okay? Mesclun would be an example. We want to have 200 pounds per week. That's our goal. And then we need to start 6 beds of Salanovas, which are really nice hybridized short lettuces, frisee, kale, mustards, and we want to have them from April to December, and then you map out how this needs to fall to make sure that you'll have 200 pounds every week. But you do that for all of your crops. And there's a lot of tools that I have and that I've developed over the years. I'm not the only one with these kind of tools, but spreadsheets that we operate really help us because it tells you the DTM and the total days in the garden, the days in the cell. So these are all information per crop that you really want, and the yield per 100-foot bed. We work per 100-foot bed on our farms, but again, it could be on 50-foot beds, it could be on 80, it doesn't matter, you can make conversions. But let's say, again, another example, I'm planning to have broccolis 6 times during my season. June 15th for my first CSA share and for market, and June 22nd for my second CSA share and for market. And then later, September, October, I want to have more broccolis, okay? So in all cases, I want to have 120 broccolis because, I have 90 for my CSA. I want to plant a bit more than 75. You remember in our example, we have a CSA that's 75 members, and the rest is I'm bringing to farmers market, okay? So then the yields for 100-foot bed of broccolis with the intensive spacings that we use and the methodology that we have at the farm should give us more or less 130 broccolis. And then you have DTMs that tell you when you need to start your broccolis, reverse engineering, so that they need to be started inside on March 22nd. And then they'll be 30 days in their cells, and so that means they're transplanted April 22nd. And then the last piece of information that you need to have going through all of your crops is the number of total days that the crop will occupy the space in the garden, either from being direct sown or from being transplanted to the last harvest. And that information is important because that's how you time your successions on the garden. So you have these 3 information: the seeding date, direct sown or started inside, the transplanting date, and the day in which the crop is done with, and the number of beds that you need to plant for all these crops. So then you'll go, and there's a lot of really, if you Google date calculators, you'll find them. This is a really nice one, timeanddate.com, really facilitates all of this management of, I want to have an 85 DTM day broccoli on that date. When do I need to start it? Plus 30 days. When do I need to transplant? Blah, blah, blah. That really speeds up the process. And in the end, you'll have codes for all of your crops which tell you, okay, so broccoli number 1, the goal is to have it by June 15th. We're planning to have 1 bed. It needs to be started inside on March 22nd, transplanted April 22nd, and the bed is going to be cleared June 30th. You need to have all of this information for all of the crops that you're planning to grow in your season. All of this, again, directly linked to your sales target and your sales outlet. Okay, and that's how you do it, because it's with this information then you'll be listing your dynamic calendars. Okay, so in the end you'll have all of your seeding numbers depending on your program for all of your crops, and then you want to do something specific before you move on, which is make sure that you're not overplanting way too much or underplanting way too much. And so once you have all of that, I have a budget planner which calculates the number of beds, the estimated yields, and the expected income, and then I just plug them in. It's a copy and paste formula. It's really easy, and then that's going to give you an estimated revenue. And if I do this and I realize that my goal was to have $150,000 of sales and I'm at 200 or 300, something's wrong. So that's my first indication that my program and all of the the program that I had wasn't right on. And then you need to come back and revisit that. You also want to calculate the total amount of beds that you're estimated planting, because you have a limited space and you want to make sure that you're not overfilling your beds, even if you're double or triple cropping on each bed. So this is just like a little tool. It's really simple. It's an Excel spreadsheet that helps you make sure that you're not totally off target. Okay? If you're not off target and you're not too far, then you move on to step number 3, okay? And step number 3 is using the information that you just generated, and this takes time. Like step number 2 is definitely the longest, and it's the one that you really need to be clear about, because it impacts all the rest. Step number 3 is that you're going to put all of this information in dynamic calendars. And like I said in the intro, the reason why you want to do this is because then you end up in the summer following guidelines that tell you what to do, when, where to plant it, by what is it going to be replace it, and when you need to start the crops that are replacing that. And that just saves you so much time. It brings the stress level way down, and then you start your week Monday morning by just having a list of everything that needs to be started inside your nursery, all the crops that need to be direct sown, all the crops that need to be transplanted. It's all listed, and then you can organize your week according to the weather, according to your staff, your priorities. You can have a weekly game plan because you have this information. The other reason why crop planting calendars are so vital, and that you should have one really well thought about, is because it is impossible to remember everything. There's way too much complexity happening on the farm, and so if you're always trying to wing it and remembering I should be planting this, I should be planting that, it's just you'll forget a lot of stuff. And when you forget to plant, then you can't cash out at the end because you don't have the crops. And if it takes 30 to 40 to 50 days to figure out that you didn't plant enough or you forgot, then it's a big loss, okay? So I always tell my students and my workers, the dynamic calendars that we have are your best friends, okay? This is an example of calendars that we have here at the farm. They're really simple. They're Excel spreadsheets, but for all of the crops, they tell us when we need to start them, and then we punch the numbers in when it's the actual seeding or transplanting date, and then it tells us a lot of the stuff afterward. So if I'm aiming to have broccolis on that date, I'll just put them in my calendars, and it tells me when I need to plant them, when I need to transplant them. And then we're also adding another thing, which is all of the systemized chores that go with these crops. Broccoli, 15 days after transplant, we want to make sure that we're adding boron or molybdenum, and so we put that in the calendars so that we don't forget. So that's really the strategy there, is to organize all of this information into one simple guideline that tells you what to do when, so that you don't forget. And so this calendar, for example, is all the tasks that needs to be done with all of our crops, especially with regards to weed prevention. So we've built a program, and it's nothing complicated, but it helps us not forget. So when something is transplanted, we know that 15 days later it needs to be hand weeded or cultivated using biodiscs that we use on the farm, or Flex-Tine harrows or whatever. For each of the crops, we have our own specific program, okay? And all of this complexity is really easy to manage because it's in an operating calendar. And that's really the trick here, okay? All right, so I'll show you an example of our calendars when we finish the 5 steps, and it's going to be clear to you how simple and effective it is. But definitely, if you are not operating your market garden following a calendar, you should finish your season as fast to go into winter months and plan this as much as possible, because it does help a lot. It makes a huge difference, okay? Step number 4 is we're taking this an extra level. And that also is a major game changer here, okay? So listen carefully with that. You want to make sure that you're not only not forgetting to plant everything, but you have a room on the farm for everything. And not just that you have the room, but you can think ahead of time the best place to put all of these crops, okay? there's a lot of good reasons why certain crops would follow others. There's crop rotations. So if you have a crop rotation, then all of your crop planting will have to be in sync with your rotation. But also there's crops like, onions. Onions are crops that usually get a bit more infested with weeds because the canopy doesn't shade out the weeds. And so you definitely want to not have, let's say, carrots that follow onions, because usually carrots are, harder to keep clean because they take such a long time to germinate. So that's one example. Another example would be, you want to put crops that need to be covered with an insect net, one beside the other, because you want to be covering with just one net as many beds as possible so that you have less burying to do on the edges. Worst scenario is that you have 2 beds that are covered in this field block, and then 3 beds that are covered in that field block, and 1 bed that is covered in another field block. And let's say they're all the same family, even worse, then you're just spreading yourself short. If you put all of them together, and then one net covers them all. So these are the kind of example that kind of pre-visualizing where things will be, you get more efficient because it's all planned out ahead of time. Then you can manage your green manures this way, you can manage your occultation, you can manage pretty much everything from a map. And the map is really the key here. And on our farms, we've developed maps that are really easy to do because all of our beds are standardized in length and they're all grouped in field blocks. And so all of our field blocks are either 10 beds or 16 beds. And then you have a map that we've generated on Excel spreadsheets, which gives you the timeline on your left. And so then you can see your production from a bird's eye view. And all of your crops are then placed on the map depending on the number of beds. Okay, so you see your production from a bird's eye view, and it kind of looks like that. The neat thing about this tool that we have here is that you can move the production around. Okay, so once you've created all of your little plantings, they're all different colors depending on the length of how long they're occupying the space in the garden. You remember I was talking about bed occupancy earlier? That's where it becomes really relevant. And then the number of beds. And then we create little boxes that we can move around in the garden. And so we can place things better, find the best fit. Is this crop going to be occultated before? Is there a cover crop? What's following what? And it's really cool because we can figure out the best possible way to manage all the complexity that we have on the farm. And on this new farm project where I have 450 permabeds and we're doing all these high succession crops, it's so valuable to have the tool that tells us not only what to do when, but where is it going, because we're managing this complexity. And again, a tool like this is not complicated to manage and to set up. It's just a matter of having this technique and this kind of precision in your planning. Okay? So, understanding production in space and time in your winter months. So again, the reason why we're doing all of this is because we want to take the field heat out of the summer months and bring them in the winter months, so that when we're operating in the garden and we have so many chores, so many things to do, we're not using our brains to think about all of these things. We're just executing what needs to happen in that given week. And we have a clear roadmap of where we want to go. So perhaps some of you guys are listening to this and thinking, oh, this is all awesome JM, it looks pretty sophisticated, blah, 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 but it's not. This is really simple. But you need to commit to making the time to go through all of these steps yourself. And I guarantee this, if you take this time and if you do something like this, you will see the rewards. And you will figure out why we've become so successful at running these farms, because we're just well organized when it's time to rock and roll. Okay? Step number 5. Last step of this session. is to order your seeds, equipment, and all material. And I don't know if you guys see this. This is one of the funniest ad that I've seen recently. There's I don't know, there's a famous actor there. Who's he?
Ryan Gosling.
Ryan Gosling say, "Hey girl, let's spread all those seed catalogs you got in the mail and just circle stuff we want all night long." It's just so awesome. Aren't we all geeks looking at seed catalogs? I just love seed catalogs. But I've learned something, is that you need to have all of your seeds prior to your season, because man, a lot of things are back orders all the time. And if you want to have Hakurei turnips for your whole season, you want to make sure that you buy them ahead of time. And plus, when you buy bigger volumes, you get better discounts. So again, that's another reason why pre-planning your whole season as much as possible makes a big difference, because then you can have approximate volumes of how many seeds of what you need and have one big seed order done at a couple of different seed suppliers. And you should really take the time in those winter months to check prices between the different seed companies, because we realize every year that certain companies are really low on certain seeds for the price but really high on other stuff. And so you need to shop around to make sure that you have good discounts. And you should always start your season with fresh seeds. There's so much loss of opportunity if you have poor germination in your direct sown crop, because you'll just have less crop to sell. And so you start with fresh seeds, and you try to be as specific with how much seed you need of each. We have, again, with our spreadsheets, we have our favorite cultivars, the one that we've tried in the past. We keep record of which ones we like, why we like them, of some that we tried and didn't like. And this is all stored in a simple spreadsheet that over the years becomes really interesting, especially if you're like me and you have a forgiving mind where you don't really remember that you tried this 5 years ago, but you did, and then you have notes that tell you, JM, this carrot really sucks, and so you don't want to be doing it again. Another thing that we have here on the farm is a simple calculator that calculates for you how many seeds you're going to need, considering the number of beds that you want to grow of each crop. And this is a homemade calculator. It's really interesting, makes a big difference, so that again you're not wasting too much time figuring all of this out. So then also, you want to make sure that all the material that you need and want to have for the season is bought ahead of time. Rubber bands, sandbags, Sanidate if you're using to wash your greens. It's just so many things. Your Rubbermaids, you have enough. Your tools, are they all on par? You have an extra blade for your greens harvester. Everything should be kind of listed of all the material that you need with your supplier list, and you should have big orders in the winter months, so that when the heat is on and into the summer and then it's time to rock and roll, you're not left without any rubber bands, or you're not wasting 4 hours going in town looking for rubber bands or ordering through Amazon and it's late. So you do all of that and you create a list of all the material that you need for the farm, and you link this to the supplier that you have. And it's really simple to just keep a tab also of how much you paid, because prices vary, and then you might want to shop around the next year if you see that the prices have gone up. So that really finishes the crop planning process. When that's done, when you're down to ordering your material, making sure that you have all your row covers, all your insect nets, all of that, you're really on your way to starting your season, and you're well prepared. And if there's one thing to remember about this workshop today, is that if you're going to be successful at doing this, you need to be well prepared. Just like a boxer that goes into the ring, he has months of training prior to when it's time to step up. And that makes the difference between, the boxer that's going to be the champion. And we want you to be the champion, so you should be well prepared in your winter months. Okay? I'm inviting you to check out Tend, which is a crop planning software out of California. And it's going to be soon available to people all around the world. Now it's mostly US and Canada based. But I've been working with Tend for the last 2 years, developing a software that integrates all of this into one system that calculates really easily, that stores the record keeping, that generates task lists, and you can operate that from your phone, from iPads, from your computer. And it's just an awesome, awesome program. Field mapping, websites, invoicing, it's all there. It's something you should check into, and I think that the future of crop planning will revolve around something like Tend, where all the information is stored in one place and it's all synced so that it's really easy to navigate. So I'm inviting you to check it out. I'm also inviting you to check out the masterclass that I now teach online. We have students from 40 different countries, and the goal of their masterclass is to provide you with information like I'm doing today that's going to help you in your farming, giving you methodology, tools, techniques, systems that are proven, because these are the systems that I've been developing and working with over the years, and the goal is to improve your farming. So you can check it out. These are high quality video modules where I'm showing you how to do stuff every step of the way. So it's really concise and it's really clear. We have Q&A sessions. We have a peer group that is really awesome. It's in a little community where everybody's like a professional grower, and we're all asking very important questions about how to do stuff. We're not wasting time with people that are not so ingrained, because these are people that are doing it for real on the fields. Crop planning tools like the one I showed you, just as one example of the benefits that are into the class. And so there's a couple of free modules. I think you can check it out. And it's been just awesome. Ever since I've launched the course, we've had praises and people that are writing to us to tell us how it's making a big difference in their farming and in their life. And it's just, that gets me excited, because in the end, that's my goal here, is to help people by providing them with techniques and strategies that work. So, and because of the fact that I've been promoting a lot of tool companies over many, many years now, we've partnered with them. And so most of the companies that sell the tools and the material that I use on my farms and then I teach about in this masterclass, you get discounts from 5 to 15%. 15% on a tool like a walk-behind tractor ends up paying for a big part of the masterclass. So it's a really cool thing. Check it out. It's a special pricing for you guys. It's open for the next 7 days. We work with cohorts, so there's a specific start time and an end time for when you can enter the class. And now it's on for the next 7 days. So this workshop today was kind of an intro to it. And again, it's 100% satisfaction guarantees. So if you guys, after 15 days, figure out that this is not for you, you don't want this, it's too much money, or whatever your reason is, I'm not into this. It's not a gimmick. I just want to help you, and check it out. And it comes with a money-back guarantee, so you might not lose anything in the end. So again, the enrollment starts now for 10 days, and it's on June 29th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And check it out. It's been helping a lot of people, and I've been having a lot of good time creating this course. It's lifetime access. I'm really hoping that some of this and the workshop today will help you become a better grower. And for me, becoming a better grower means that you'll have more time to have a happy, fulfilled life. And that's going to be it for me today. Happy farming, and see you next time.